The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Bragg as Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez adjusted her beret one final time before entering the briefing room. She had worked harder than anyone to earn her place in the Special Operations Unit, but whispers still followed her through the corridors. Some questioned whether a woman belonged among the elite forces, especially one who stood barely 5 feet 4 inches tall. Colonel James Harrison was already seated at the head of the conference table when Maria entered. His reputation preceded him, a decorated veteran with 3 tours in Afghanistan and a no-nonsense approach to military discipline. Each team would be evaluated on tactical execution, leadership under pressure, and adaptability to changing battlefield conditions. "I need a volunteer to lead Team Alpha," the colonel announced, scanning the room. Several hands shot up immediately, but his eyes settled on Maria. "Rodriguez, you've been unusually quiet. What's your assessment of this mission?" The room fell silent. Maria could feel the weight of every gaze upon her as she stood to address the group. She had studied the briefing materials extensively and had strong opinions about the proposed strategy. "Sir, the current approach focuses heavily on direct assault tactics," she began confidently. "However, urban environments require more finesse. The civilian population simulation adds complexity that demands surgical precision rather than overwhelming force." Colonel Harrison's expression remained unreadable as she continued. "I believe a mixed approach, combining rapid deployment with careful intelligence gathering, would yield better results and minimize collateral damage." One of the other sergeants scoffed quietly. "Easy-to-talk strategy from a textbook, Rodriguez. Real combat is different." Maria's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. "Sergeant Williams, I understand the difference between theory and practice. My point is that this exercise specifically tests our ability to adapt conventional tactics to unconventional environments." The colonel raised his hand to silence the growing tension. "Interesting perspective, Rodriguez. Are you volunteering to put your strategy to the test?" Maria's heart raced, but she didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir, I am." "Very well. You'll lead Team Alpha. The exercise begins in 72 hours. As the briefing concluded and soldiers filed out, Maria remained behind to study the mission details more closely. She knew that all eyes would be on her performance, and failure wasn't an option. The weight of representing not just herself, but all women in special operations pressed heavily on her shoulders. Over the next 3 days, Maria threw herself into preparation. She analyzed satellite imagery of the training facility, studied the behavioral patterns of the role-playing civilians, and developed detailed contingency plans for various scenarios. Her team members, initially skeptical of serving under a female leader, gradually began to respect her thorough approach and tactical insights. The night before the exercise, Maria couldn't sleep. She walked the base perimeter, reviewing her strategy one final time. The mock city sprawled before her in the distance, illuminated by security lights. Tomorrow, she would prove that leadership wasn't about physical strength or gender. It was about intelligence, determination, and the ability to inspire others to exceed their own limitations. As dawn approached, Maria felt a calm confidence settle over her. She had prepared as thoroughly as possible. Now it was time to demonstrate that the quiet sergeant who had endured months of skepticism possessed the skills and courage to lead elite soldiers into battle. The radio crackled to life at 0500 hours. "All teams, report to staging area. Operation Steel Thunder commences in 30 minutes. Maria gathered her gear and headed toward what would become the most important 36 hours of her military career. She didn't know that by the end of the exercise, her name would be spoken with respect throughout the Special Operations community, or that Colonel Harrison himself would personally recommend her for advancement. All she knew was that she had a mission to complete and a team counting on her leadership. The skeptics would have their answers soon enough. The transport vehicles rumbled to life as teams loaded their equipment. Maria took one last look at her mission notes, then tucked them away. From this point forward, it would be instinct, training, and determination that guided her actions. The base watched as the convoy disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, carrying the soldiers toward a training exercise that would challenge everything they thought they knew about leadership, courage, and the true meaning of military excellence. What happened next would become the stuff of base legend, though none of the observers could have predicted the extraordinary events that were about to unfold in the mock city beyond the hills. The mock city stretched across 15 acres of carefully constructed urban terrain. Three-story buildings lined narrow streets, complete with balconies, rooftops, and hidden passages designed to simulate real-world combat conditions. Somewhere within this concrete maze, 50 role-playing civilians waited alongside opposing 4 soldiers trained to test the limits of each special operations team. Maria's team Alpha consisted of 6 elite soldiers, each handpicked for their specialized skills. As they approached the city's outer perimeter, she gathered them for final instructions. "Remember, our primary objective is to locate and secure the high-value target while ensuring civilian safety," she whispered into her radio headset. "Intelligence suggests the target is being held in the Central District, but expect misdirection." Corporal Jenkins, a demolitions expert with 8 years of experience, raised his hand. "Sergeant, conventional wisdom says we breach the main avenue for fastest access to the center." Maria shook her head. "That's exactly what they expect. We're taking the scenic route through the residential sector. It's slower, but it gives us better intelligence and fewer choke points." The team exchanged glances. This wasn't the aggressive, direct approach they were accustomed to, but Maria's confidence was infectious. Specialist Chun, their communications expert, spoke up. "What's our backup plan if civilians get caught in crossfire?" "There won't be crossfire," Maria replied firmly. "We avoid engagement until we have clear fields of fire and confirmed targets. This isn't about speed, it's about precision." As they moved into the urban environment, Maria's unconventional strategy immediately paid dividends. While other teams triggered alarms and found themselves pinned down by defensive fire, Team Alpha slipped through residential areas virtually undetected. The role-playing civilians, mostly base personnel in street clothes, provided crucial intelligence when approached correctly. Maria had studied their background profiles and knew how to gain their trust quickly. An elderly woman sitting on a park bench revealed the location of enemy observation posts. A shopkeeper mentioned unusual activity around the old bank building. 3 hours into the exercise, Team Alpha had mapped enemy positions throughout half the city without firing a single shot. Other teams reported heavy casualties and slow progress as they fought through predetermined kill zones. Colonel Harrison monitored the exercise from the observation tower, watching feeds from cameras positioned throughout the mock city. His staff officers provided regular updates on each team's progress. Team Bravo has sustained 40% casualties attempting to breach the main plaza, reported Major Campbell. Team Charlie is pinned down in the warehouse district. "What about Team Alpha?" the colonel asked, studying the tactical display. "Sir, they've been almost invisible. Minimal radio chatter, no engagement reports, but they're covering ground faster than anyone else." Colonel Harrison Fronet. Rodriguez's team appear to be avoiding combat entirely, which could be interpreted as either brilliant tactics or simple cowardice. The real test would come when they finally encountered serious opposition. That test came sooner than expected. As Team Alpha approached the Central District, they discovered the high-value target's location had been moved to a fortified position in the old courthouse. Intelligence indicated at least 12 enemy soldiers defending the building, along with several civilian hostages. Maria studied the courthouse through binoculars from a concealed position 2 blocks away. The building offered multiple escape routes for the enemy and numerous positions where civilians could be endangered during an assault. "Sergeant, we need a call for backup," urged Sergeant Davis, the team's medic. "This is a job for multiple units." "Negative," Maria responded. "By the time backup arrives, they'll have moved the target again. We do this ourselves, but we do it smart." Her plan was audacious in its simplicity. Rather than assault the heavily defended main entrance, Team Alpha would create a diversion at the rear of the building, while Maria herself infiltrated through the courthouse's old service tunnels, passages she had discovered during her intensive preparation. "Ma'am, with respect, you shouldn't be the one going in alone," protested Corporal Jenkins. Maria smiled grimly. "I'm the smallest, quietest, and I know this building's layout better than anyone. Besides, command responsibility means I don't ask my team to take risks I won't take myself." As her team moved into position, Maria crawled through a maintenance tunnel that connected to the courthouse basement. The space was cramped and dark, barely wide enough for her small frame. Larger soldiers would never have fit through the narrow passage. Inside the building, she could hear voices from the floors above, enemy soldiers calling out positions, and civilian actors playing their roles as hostages. Maria had memorized the courthouse blueprints and knew exactly where the target would be held. The old building's wooden floors creaked under her boots as she moved silently up a service staircase. Through a crack in a door, she observed two enemy soldiers guarding the main hallway. Beyond them, she could see into the large courtroom where the high-value target, a base intelligence officer playing the role of a captured diplomat, sat surrounded by guards. Maria's earpiece crackled softly. "Alpha 6, this is Alpha Team. In position for diversion. Copy, Alpha Team. Execute diversion in 30 seconds." She counted down silently, preparing her next move. When the diversion began, flashbang grenades and simulated gunfire from the building's rear. The guards rushed toward the commotion exactly as she had predicted. Maria slipped into the courtroom through a side entrance, moving like a shadow behind the judicial bench. The remaining guards were focused on radio communications with their teammates, trying to coordinate a response to the apparent rear assault. What happened next demonstrated why Maria Rodriguez had earned her place among the Special Operations elite, despite the doubts of her colleagues. Moving with precision born of countless hours of training, she neutralized the first guard silently from behind. The second guard turned to the sound, but found himself facing an adversary who had already closed the distance. Her hand-to-hand combat training proved flawless as she disabled him without alerting the others. The high-value target looked up in amazement as Maria cut his restraints. "How did you—" "Questions later," she whispered. "Can you move?" Within minutes, Maria had extracted the target through the same service tunnels she had used to enter. Her team provided cover as they emerged 3 blocks away from the courthouse, leaving the enemy soldiers still responding to the diversion at the building's rear entrance. The exercise observers could barely believe what they had witnessed. Team Alpha had completed their primary objective in record time with 0 casualties and minimal engagement with enemy forces. But the exercise was far from over. As Maria's team prepared to move to their extraction point, new intelligence arrived that would test everything they had learned about working together under pressure. The radio crackled with an urgent message that would change everything. "All teams, be advised. Multiple civilian casualties reported in the Market District. Medical emergency in progress. Nearest team respond immediately." Maria looked at her exhausted soldiers and then toward the smoke rising from the market area. The smart tactical decision would be to proceed to extraction as planned. They had completed their mission successfully. But leadership, Maria understood, sometimes meant choosing the harder path. The smoke billowing from the Market District carried with it the acrid smell of burning chemicals and the distant sounds of panic. Maria stared at the chaos through her binoculars, knowing that every second of delay could mean the difference between life and death for the civilians trapped in what appeared to be a catastrophic accident. "Alpha 6, this is command." Colonel Harrison's voice crackled through her earpiece. "You are cleared to proceed to extraction point. Team Delta is responding to the market incident." Maria hesitated for only a moment before keying her radio. "Command, Team Alpha is closest to the incident. Request permission to render assistance." "Negative, Alpha 6. Your mission is complete. Proceed to extraction." The high-value target, still catching his breath from their escape through the courthouse tunnels, looked at Maria with concern. "Sergeant, those people need help." Maria's team gathered around her, awaiting orders. They had successfully completed the most challenging part of their mission, and extraction was only 15 minutes away. Standard protocol dictated they follow orders and withdraw from the exercise area. But through the smoke, Maria could see civilian actors stumbling from buildings, some of them genuinely injured from what appeared to be a simulated chemical leak that had gone wrong. The exercise controllers seemed to be struggling to maintain order as the emergency scenario spiraled beyond their original parameters. Sergeant Davis, their medic, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I can see at least 3 people who need immediate medical attention, even if this is just training." Maria made a decision that would define her military career. "Command Alpha 6. We have visual on multiple casualties requiring immediate medical intervention. Requesting permission to deviate from extraction protocol. Alpha 6, I repeat, proceed to extraction. That is a direct order." Maria looked at her team, then at the civilians in distress, then back at her soldiers. She saw in their faces the same conflict she felt, the tension between following orders and doing what their training and conscience told them was right. "Alpha Team, listen up," she said quietly. "Command has ordered us to extraction. Anyone who wants to follow that order is free to do so, with no questions asked. But I'm going to help those people." Corporal Jenkins was the first to speak. "Where you go, Sergeant, we go." One by one, each member of Team Alpha confirmed their commitment to the rescue mission. Even the high-value target, technically a non-combatant in the exercise, volunteered to assist with civilian evacuation. As they moved toward the market district, Maria's radio erupted with increasingly urgent communications from Colonel Harrison. "Alpha 6, you are operating outside mission parameters. Return to extraction immediately." Maria switched her radio to the emergency frequency and responded calmly. "Command, Alpha 6 has identified a clear and present danger to civilian personnel. We are rendering humanitarian assistance under emergency protocols." What they found in the market district exceeded even their worst expectations. A malfunctioning smoke generator had created a genuine chemical hazard, and several civilian actors were suffering from respiratory distress. The exercise controllers, trained in tactical scenarios but not emergency medical response, were overwhelmed by the rapidly evolving situation. Maria immediately took charge, deploying her team with the same precision she had used in the courthouse operation. Sergeant Davis began triaging the most seriously affected civilians, while Corporal Jenkins worked to identify and isolate the source of the chemical leak. "Chun, establish communication with base medical," Maria ordered. "Get real ambulances out here, not exercise vehicles. This is no longer a simulation." Specialist Chin's radio crackled to life as he coordinated with base emergency services. "Medical teams en route. ETA 12 minutes. Maria organized the evacuation with methodical efficiency. Her team created a safe corridor through the contaminated area, moving civilians to a designated assembly point upwind from the chemical source. The high-value target proved invaluable in calming panicked actors who were struggling to distinguish between simulated danger and real threat. As they worked, Maria noticed Colonel Harrison's voice had disappeared from the radio traffic. In its place, she heard Major Campbell coordinating with actual emergency responders and base security. 8 minutes into the rescue operation, Maria realized they weren't alone. Teams from other units, having completed their own missions or abandoned them entirely, began arriving to assist with the evacuation. The entire exercise had transformed from a military training scenario into a genuine emergency response effort. Sergeant Williams, the same soldier who had questioned Maria's tactical knowledge during the original briefing, appeared at her side, carrying an unconscious civilian. "Where do you want him, Sergeant?" he asked, his earlier skepticism replaced by obvious respect. "Medical station, north side of the plaza," Maria directed. "Make sure Davis checks his airways first." As the base ambulances arrived, Maria conducted a final head count of evacuated civilians. 43 people had been moved to safety, with only 2 requiring hospitalization for minor respiratory irritation. The chemical leak had been contained, and the immediate danger had passed. Colonel Harrison finally appeared in person, arriving in a command vehicle with his senior staff. Maria braced herself for the disciplinary action that would certainly follow her decision to disobey direct orders. Instead, the colonel walked directly to the medical station where Sergeant Davis was providing final treatment to the last affected civilian. He observed the organized efficiency of the rescue operation, the calm professionalism of soldiers from multiple teams working together, and the obvious leadership that had transformed potential disaster into successful crisis management. When he finally approached Maria, his expression was unreadable. "Sergeant Rodriguez," he said formally. "Yes, sir," Maria replied, standing at attention. "Walk with me." They moved away from the bustle of the emergency response, stopping near the edge of the exercise area where the mock city gave way to natural terrain. For several moments, Colonel Harrison said nothing, studying the scene behind them. "You disobeyed a direct order," he finally stated. "Yes, sir." "You abandoned your assigned mission parameters." "Yes, sir." "You made a command decision that potentially endangered your team and compromised exercise objectives." Maria took a deep breath. "Yes, sir. I take full responsibility for my actions and those of my team." Colonel Harrison turned to face her directly. What he said next would change everything Maria thought she knew about military leadership and the true measure of a soldier's worth. But first, there was something he needed to tell her about what he had observed during the courthouse operation, something that would explain why her career was about to take a direction she had never imagined possible. Colonel Harrison's weathered face showed no emotion as he reached into his tactical vest and withdrew a tablet computer. The screen displayed multiple camera angles from throughout the exercise area, including footage that made Maria's breath catch in her throat. "Sergeant Rodriguez, before we discuss your decision to disobey orders, there's something you need to understand about today's exercise." He angled the tablet so she could see the display clearly. The footage showed her infiltration of the courthouse from multiple perspectives, cameras she had never noticed during her careful reconnaissance. The courthouse operation was recorded in detail. The colonel continued. "Your approach, entry method, and extraction of the high-value target represents some of the finest tactical work I've witnessed in 25 years of military service." Maria remained silent, uncertain where this conversation was leading. But more importantly, Colonel Harrison said, his voice taking on a different tone, "Your performance validated something we've been testing for the past 6 months." He swiped to a new screen showing exercise data from multiple teams across several training cycles. Charts and statistics filled the display, documenting success rates, casualty figures, and mission completion times. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, you weren't randomly selected to lead Team Alpha. You were specifically chosen as part of an ongoing evaluation program designed to identify exceptional leadership potential in non-traditional candidates." The revelation hit Maria like a physical blow. "Sir, the skepticism you've faced, the comments about women in special operations, the questions about your qualifications, all of it was carefully orchestrated to create authentic pressure conditions. We needed to see how you would perform, not just tactically, but as a leader facing genuine adversity." Colonel Harrison closed the tablet and looked directly at her. The chemical leak was not part of the planned exercise. That was a real emergency that required real leadership decisions. Your choice to disobey my order and render assistance was exactly the response we hoped to see from a truly exceptional officer. Maria's mind reeled as she processed this information. The order to proceed to extraction was a test. Everything was a test, Sergeant. The briefing room skepticism, the challenging mission parameters, even the direct order you chose to disobey. We needed to know if you would follow rules blindly or make independent decisions based on moral conviction and tactical assessment. Behind them, the emergency responders were completing their work. Base personnel moved efficiently to secure the area and document the incident for after-action review. The contrast between the chaotic emergency response and the calm professionalism of the military units was striking. "Sir, I don't understand. Why all the deception?" Colonel Harrison gestured toward the soldiers from multiple teams who had abandoned their own missions to assist with the rescue effort. Because real leadership isn't about following predetermined scenarios, Sergeant. It's about adapting to unexpected circumstances and inspiring others to exceed their own limitations. He pointed to Sergeant Williams, who was helping load equipment into evacuation vehicles. 6 hours ago, that man questioned your tactical knowledge. Now he's volunteering to serve under your command permanently. Maria watched Williams work, remembering his earlier skepticism and his subsequent willingness to follow her lead during the emergency. The military is changing, Rodriguez. We need leaders who can think independently, who can earn respect through competence rather than intimidation, and who understand that true strength sometimes means choosing the more difficult path. Colonel Harrison began walking slowly back toward the command vehicles, motioning for Maria to follow. Your performance today, both in the courthouse operation and during the emergency response, demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership we need for future military challenges. What happens now, sir? Now you face a choice that will determine the direction of your military career. They stopped beside the colonel's command vehicle, where Major Campbell and other senior officers were reviewing exercise data and emergency response protocols. Maria recognized some of the faces from previous training cycles, officers she had always assumed were simply observing routine exercises. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Colonel Harrison said formally, based on your performance during today's evaluation, you are being recommended for immediate promotion to Gunnery Sergeant and assignment to the Advanced Leadership Development Program. Maria's heart pounded. The Advanced Leadership Development Program was reserved for the most promising officers in the military, those identified as potential future commanders of major operations. The program involves 18 months of intensive training in advanced tactics, international relations, and strategic planning. Upon completion, you would be eligible for commission as a second lieutenant and assignment to Special Operations Planning Staff. The offer represented everything Maria had dreamed of achieving in her military career, but she sensed there was more to consider. However, the colonel continued, there's an alternative assignment available that might interest you more. He gestured toward the evacuation area where her team was conducting final equipment checks. The emergency response today highlighted a significant gap in our capabilities. We need officers who can bridge the divide between military operations and humanitarian assistance. Maria listened intently as he outlined the alternative. I'm establishing a new unit focused on crisis response and civilian protection in combat environments. The unit would combine traditional military tactics with emergency medical training, disaster relief protocols, and advanced communication capabilities. The position would involve developing new training programs, working with international humanitarian organizations, and leading missions that prioritize civilian safety alongside military objectives. The unit commander would need someone with proven tactical skills, demonstrated leadership under pressure, and the moral courage to make difficult decisions in complex situations. Maria understood immediately. You're offering me command of the unit. I'm offering you the opportunity to create something new in military service, Sergeant. Something that combines the best aspects of special operations training with humanitarian mission focus. The choice before her was clear, but not simple. The Advanced Leadership Development Program represented traditional career advancement, following established paths towards senior military command. The new unit offered the chance to pioneer innovative approaches to military service, but with uncertain career implications. How long do I have to decide, sir? Colonel Harrison smiled for the first time during their conversation. Take the time you need, but not too long. The military is changing whether we guide that change or simply react to it. I believe you have the potential to be one of the officers who shapes the future of military service. As they returned to the main group, Maria's radio crackled with a message that would provide the final piece of information she needed to make her decision. The message would also explain why Colonel Harrison had seemed so confident about her choice throughout their conversation. What came through the radio would reveal the true scope of the day's events, and confirmed that Maria Rodriguez had already proven herself capable of extraordinary leadership under the most demanding circumstances imaginable. The radio message that crackled through Maria's earpiece came from an unexpected source. General Patricia Morrison, commanding officer of the entire Special Operations Command. All exercise participants, this is General Morrison. I am personally commending the actions of Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez and Team Alpha for their exceptional performance during today's crisis response. Their decisive leadership prevented potential serious injuries and demonstrated the highest standards of military professionalism. Maria's eyes widened as the message continued. Around her, soldiers from multiple teams stopped their activities to listen. Furthermore, the tactical execution demonstrated by Team Alpha during the courthouse operation has been reviewed by Joint Chief Staff and will be incorporated into future training protocols for all special operations units. Colonel Harrison watched Maria's reaction carefully as the full scope of the day's significance became clear. This had been far more than a routine training exercise or even an advanced evaluation. It had been a comprehensive assessment observed by the highest levels of military command. Sergeant Rodriguez, the radio continued, report to Building 4, conference room at 1800 hours for immediate debriefing with senior command staff. Maria looked at Colonel Harrison with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Sir, General Morrison was observing the entire exercise. Not just observing, Sergeant. Today's evaluation was conducted at her specific request. The General has been following your career development for the past year, based on reports from your previous commanding officers. As they walked toward the debriefing location, Colonel Harrison explained the broader context of Maria's selection and evaluation. General Morrison served as a company commander in Iraq, where she observed firsthand the need for military leaders who could adapt rapidly to complex humanitarian situations. She believes the future of military operations requires officers who understand that tactical success must be balanced with moral responsibility. The debriefing facility was unlike anything Maria had expected. Instead of a standard military conference room, she found herself in a sophisticated command center equipped with multiple monitors displaying exercise footage, tactical analysis software, and communication links to military installations around the world. General Morrison stood at the center of the room, studying displays that showed detailed breakdowns of every aspect of the day's exercise. She was younger than Maria had expected, perhaps mid-40s, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command, but approachable enough to inspire confidence rather than fear. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, General Morrison said, without preamble, your performance today confirmed everything we hoped to see from this evaluation process. Maria stood at attention as the general reviewed key moments from the exercise on the main display screen. The courthouse infiltration demonstrated exceptional tactical innovation. Most candidates attempted direct assault approaches that resulted in high casualty rates and mission failure. Your decision to utilize building infrastructure showed both creativity and thorough preparation. The screen shifted to show footage from the emergency response in the Market District. More significantly, your leadership during the chemical leak crisis revealed character traits that cannot be taught in any military school. The decision to disobey orders in favor of humanitarian assistance required moral courage that exceeds tactical competence. General Morrison turned to face Maria directly. But what impressed me most was your ability to inspire immediate loyalty from soldiers who had previously questioned your capabilities. Sergeant Williams has already requested permanent assignment to any unit under your command. Maria remained silent, processing the magnitude of what she was hearing. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the military is facing challenges that require leaders who can operate effectively in environments where traditional tactical approaches are insufficient. We need officers who understand that military excellence includes humanitarian responsibility. The general gestured to the display screens showing global military operations. Current deployments involve peacekeeping missions, disaster relief operations, and counterterrorism efforts that require sophisticated understanding of civilian populations and international cooperation. Your performance today suggests you possess the leadership qualities necessary for these complex mission requirements. Colonel Harrison has outlined 2 career path options for your consideration. Maria nodded. Yes, ma'am. The Advanced Leadership Development Program and the new Crisis Response Unit. Both represent significant opportunities, but I want you to understand something additional about the Crisis Response Unit option. General Morrison activated a new display showing proposed organizational charts and mission parameters for the unit Colonel Harrison had described. The unit would operate under direct Special Operations Command authority with unprecedented autonomy in mission selection and tactical approach. You would have access to resources typically reserved for much senior officers, including intelligence support, logistics coordination, and international liaison capabilities. Maria studied the proposed structure, recognizing the extraordinary level of responsibility being offered. The unit's first deployment would be to establish humanitarian security protocols in Central Africa, working with international relief organizations to protect civilian populations during regional conflicts. The general paused to let this information settle. The assignment would involve 6 months of advanced training, followed by 18 months of field deployment. Success would virtually guarantee promotion to captain and assignment to strategic planning positions. However, General Morrison continued, the unit commander position requires someone willing to accept significant personal risk and professional uncertainty. The missions would often involve situations where traditional military support might not be available. Maria realized this was the moment of decision Colonel Harrison had prepared her for throughout the day. Everything, the courthouse operation, the emergency response, even the skepticism from fellow soldiers, had been building toward this choice. Ma'am, may I ask why I was selected for this evaluation? General Morrison smiled. Because 18 months ago, during a routine training exercise at Fort Campbell, you made a decision that brought you to our attention. The main display showed footage Maria recognized from a previous training cycle, a mountain warfare exercise where she had chosen to abandon her assigned position to rescue a soldier who had fallen into a ravine during a night navigation course. You violated direct orders then, too, Sergeant. Your decision to attempt that rescue could have resulted in court-martial proceedings. Instead, it demonstrated exactly the kind of independent thinking and moral courage we need in future military leaders. Maria remembered that night vividly, the difficult choice between following orders and saving a fellow soldier, the risks involved in the rescue attempt, and the subsequent disciplinary review that had ultimately resulted in commendation rather than punishment. Every exceptional officer in military history has faced moments where following orders conflicted with doing what was right. Your ability to make those difficult choices while maintaining tactical effectiveness identifies you as someone capable of extraordinary leadership. The room fell silent as Maria considered her response. Through the windows, she could see the mock city where her military career had reached its defining moment. Soldiers were securing equipment and preparing for transport back to the main base, unaware that they had participated in an evaluation that would influence military training protocols for years to come. General Morrison, Maria said finally, I accept command of the Crisis Response Unit. The general's smile broadened. Outstanding, Captain Rodriguez. Ma'am, your promotion is effective immediately. You'll report to Advanced Operations Training Command next Monday to begin preparation for your new responsibilities. As Maria left the debriefing facility, she understood that her military career had fundamentally changed in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. The young woman who had entered the briefing room that morning questioning whether she belonged among elite soldiers was now a captain entrusted with developing entirely new approaches to military service. Colonel Harrison was waiting outside, no longer the intimidating figure who had tested her resolve throughout the day, but a mentor who had guided her toward recognizing her own potential. Congratulations, Captain, he said, extending his hand. I believe you're going to change the way the military thinks about leadership. Maria shook his hand firmly, finally, understanding that the most important battle she would fight in her career would be won not through overwhelming force, but through the courage to choose compassion over convenience, innovation over tradition, and moral conviction over blind obedience. The base was quiet as evening approached, but Maria Rodriguez's story was just beginning. Within months, her name would be known throughout the military as the officer who proved that true strength comes from the willingness to stand up for what's right, regardless of the personal cost. The colonel had grabbed hold of her hair during the exercise, metaphorically speaking, pulling her toward a destiny she had never imagined possible. Now the entire base, and soon the entire military, would understand what real leadership looked like when tested under fire.